Hey moms, it's Laura Ollinger. Welcome to the Positively Healthy Mom podcast. Because there's no manual for the hardest job in the world. So today, I'm so excited to welcome Jessyka Coulter, CEO and founder of Ace Cookie Tutoring. So Jessy, say hello to everyone.
Hey, glad to be here, Laura. It's been a while.
It has been a while. So I've actually been done some work with Jessy in the past, and so I'm excited to bring her into my world today. And so, Jessy, I'm so excited I feel like this is the perfect time of year because we're getting close to midterms, and I don't know about you, but my clients are starting to feel the pressure, and a lot of them have this break off for Thanksgiving week, and so they're gonna either completely blow this time off and have fun with family and friends, or some of them I know are buckling down. I have one client I met with today who is dedicating one day for each class, just to make sure she's kind of caught up and up to speed. She's super organized. So what are your first thoughts? We're gonna talk a lot about study skills and things like that, but what are your just first thoughts, first impressions?
Well, when you say Thanksgiving break, you're exactly right that we've got two choices. We've got the students, that are going to make use of their time. And then you've got the kids that are going to be like, I don't have to think about school for how many ever days. And I'm with you. I want all of my students, all the teens out there to be like your client and actually use this break. Like for me as a tutor in a perfect world, yes, school never stops. And that includes holidays. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, awesome. Okay, so let's just get right into it. So why don't teens love to learn?
And it's so simple, Laura. I mean, that's why I do what I do. The fact is that it's not that teens aren't smart enough. It's not that someone can't learn. It's just literally our teens are missing study skills. That's all it comes down to is they don't know how to learn because they don't know how to study.
So what is that connection then between studying and learning?
I love that question. I really do, because I thought it was clear, but being a study skills tutor, of course, it's clear to me, right? And so while I've been talking to mamas and I got that question lots of times, it's simple. And so now I try to make sure I share it with as many mamas as possible. But it's simply studying is the process of learning. So we have to know how to study in order to know how to learn.
I like that. I've never heard that before, but I mean, it makes sense. And so, yeah, when you understand it that way, that probably clears up a lot of confusion and stress for people. And what is the right age you think it is to start kind of learning these study skills?
I love that question too. You're asking all sorts of good things, Laura. So to me, in a perfect world, I would start working with kiddos in middle school. So I generally say 7th grade is the perfect age. Some mature 6th graders do really well with my Love to Learn program. But generally, unfortunately, so many mamas do not come to me until their kids are in high school or even college, and either their kids dropped out of college or we finally hit that wall and those beautiful grades that have been going so well suddenly just tank. We hit that wall. That's like, yep, it was going to happen. It's just a matter of when.
Yes. And then let's talk about learning styles. I know for me, I am very familiar with learning styles, not just because of my degree. I have a master's in education and health and wellness. So part of what I had to learn is learning styles, but also as a coach, I need to know what a client's learning style is because I need to know how they're best going to process the information that I'm sharing. Are they visual? Are they auditory? Are they kinesthetic? And so that kind of helps me see their model of the world and like how they absorb information. So what are your thoughts about that?
Oh, I'm happy to hear you say that. That's part of the reason why I brought you onto my summit the first time. And that's why when you asked for this, I'm like, yes, let's keep talking. So I'm 100% behind that. That's what I do. I mean, that's honestly when I sat down to figure out what are those 12 study skills I want to teach teens, it started with the learning styles. I was like, that's just going to be like one little module of my program. And then I was like, no, these learning styles, like you said, knowing how to communicate it's essential. I mean, these learning styles impact every single study skill that I teach, and the teens have to know them for the classroom. They have to know them at home. They have to know when they're learning anything. And so, Laura, I would tell you, I 100% believe in them. I would even call them learning preferences, if you like that better, that they are important.
Mm-hmm. And then, I've heard so many people tell me, teenagers specifically, that they have trouble remembering things. And
Mhm.
so I have given my own personal advice based off of research I've done or things that I've been taught by others. But I'm really curious, like, what do you say to that kiddo who just has a hard time, like, having information stick in their brain?
Well, I would tell you that retaining information is one of those study skills I teach for that exact reason. And
Mhm.
honestly, when it comes down to teens not remembering, like if they tell me I sit down and take the test and then my mind goes blank, then I ask them, well, how did you study? And they'll tell me, whatever they did, whether it was reviewing notes, doing practice problems, or just talking to friends, whatever it is. Well, then I ask them, how do they learn? And 9 times out of 10, they can't tell me, or they have no idea what I mean. They don't even know to say the word learning style. And
Mhm.
so we talk about it. It's like, okay, well, now that we know you're visual, in order to remember, you have to study like a visual learner. And so that way,
Mhm.
when you sit down to take that test, sit down, do that homework, well, it's in your brain because you studied the right way.
Okay, well then I'm gonna make it personal because so around here, when you're in eighth grade, our kids have to memorize in U.S. history or American history. They have to memorize. It's like the I know it's the preamble. The what are all those things? Whatever those
Mhm.
things are. I can't remember all the things. But when my daughter was in eighth grade, she was having the hardest time like memorizing these because they're long, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of the words she didn't really even know what
Mhm.
they really meant. So she didn't even know necessarily what she was memorizing. And she's a kinesthetic learner. And so I was trying everything I could think of that would be a kinesthetic connection in the brain. So we talked about like crossing the midline. I talked about like throwing a ball or doing something physical to activate the body and the senses in that part of the brain while she was saying it. And the funny thing was it actually worked pretty well. But
Mhm.
this was just something that I kind of, made up, so to speak. So what are your thoughts about a kinesthetic learner? How do they learn best?
No, you've got the perfect idea. I mean, one of the examples I like to give is, yeah, we're talking about memorization or retaining. So I have a kiddo right now that she has spelling words. I didn't know middle schoolers still had spelling tests, and I'm happy to hear that. I just didn't know that was a thing out there in the world still. Yeah, I didn't know, but yet I asked one of my older kiddos just the other day. I was like, yeah, because he's a kinesthetic learner, she's kinesthetic, so I like to kind of share between students because it's like
Mhm.
this technique might work for you too, because I know it works. But she loves volleyball. And so spelling
Mhm.
tests. So we talked about, well, how can we tie volleyball into the spelling word? And it was as simple as like you're saying, we did, I told her decide, do you bump do you bump and then say a letter? Do you bump and then as it's in the air before it hits your arms, you have to say the letter? So that was something very simple. Kinesthetic kiddos, they love to move. So, I mean, it can be something physical,
Mhm.
some kind of like sport related thing, or it could be like you were talking about with your daughter having to cross her arms. I have my kids walk. I tell them, you
Mhm.
do not have to sit. Like even in the classroom, I have a kiddo right now. She loves to stand, and it's because she's kinesthetic. And so it's like we went through together each class. Can you stand in this class? And it has to start with, okay, where do you sit? Right? We don't want her in the front row blocking everybody else.
Yeah.
And then it also comes down to, are they standing desks in that class? Is it kind of a class that already has lots of movement anyway? Obviously PE is very kinesthetic, but maybe it's a class with lots of stations, where it's a teacher that does like lots of little modules every class.
Mhm. Mhm. And then, I don't know if you work with kind of neurodivergent kids, ADHD kids. I assume that you do. I have a lot of those kids as my clients. And so, what is your method for working with kids like this who are, have the executive function struggles, have a hard time being organized, have a hard time completing tasks, don't even know what they need to do or when they need to do it? Like, what is your overall strategy for that?
So I feel like that's two questions there, Laura. So
Yeah.
I would tell you that I get, just like we talked about, what's the connection between studying and learning. I
Mhm.
have a lot of mamas that don't know what the connection or similarities, differences are between executive functioning skills and study skills. And the
Mhm.
way I explain it is that I have yet to be told of or find out about an executive functioning skill that's not a study skill. But there's a lot more study skills than there are executive functioning skills. So that's the reason I
Mhm.
call myself a study skills tutor, not executive functioning coach, because something like note taking, something like annotating, those more tactile kind of skills, I teach those, but most executive functioning coaches don't. So that's
Uh,
kind of thought number one. But
mhm,
then when you bring in, yeah, the neurodivergent, neurotypical, no matter what the diagnosis is or isn't, it's the
mhm.
same skills. Like
Right.
it's literally, they all need the same skills. And then that just also comes down to, again, those learning styles.
Mhm.
I've learned a lot of ADHD kids are tactile, kinesthetic. They need to be moving.
Right.
And that does not surprise me at all.
Mhm.
But the more I learn and the more I speak to people like you and other experts, I learned that, okay, there's different types of ADHD because, yeah, that's not something I ever studied. I have a, business degree, biology degree, so nothing to do with education, but I
Mhm.
have worked in a lot of special education classrooms. So
Mhm.
I've seen these different things and they all need the same skills. We just have to personalize it for each kid.
Yeah, yeah. Um, that was a very, yeah, I like that. I like all that information. And then, what when what we're going to do is we're going to switch over to moms in just a minute, but right now I just want to focus on the kids. So, what strategies do you have for a child or a kid who is just seemingly not motivated to do their work?
And that's a good question. I actually, right, not too long before we hopped on here, I was working with a kid on motivation. And
Mhm.
it literally, the way I teach it, I call it reward systems. And I know some of our listeners might go, oh, no, I don't do rewards.
Mhm.
And the truth of it is, I call it reward system. It's the same thing as a motivation system, but you can also call it an if then system. So, what I do with my students and what I just did with this client is we sat down and said, what motivates you? And she gives me some of those things we all expect, right? She has parents that are very generous and are buying her lots of things. So she's,
Mhm.
expecting the money for chores. She's expecting this and this. And like her birthday's this week. So of course she's got her mind on gifts too.
Mhm.
But I asked her, well, what do you get for you? Like what's something that you can do for you at home that you don't have to ask mom or dad for, that you don't have to have bought for you? So
Mm.
we talked about it, and she likes to clean her room, and that kind of seems probably strange for a teenager,
Mhm.
but she's like, I like it being clean. Like she's like, I liked it to walk in and know where my stuff is. I like just feeling like it's mine and it's not like messy. And I'm like,
Mhm.
that's a motivator right there to clean your room. And we
Mhm.
talked about baking, and there's a reason cookies in my business name. So of course, we had to get it a little distracted by, well, what kind of baking, right? But that's a motivator too. So
Okay.
I guess short answer, Laura, would be just having the kids think of what motivates them. It doesn't have to be the tangible things. And we didn't
Mhm.
even talk about school. So, it could be what grades do they want? Like the why, what are they working towards?
Totally. And I know this is something that you and I had actually talked about in the past. And sometimes I make it so simple, kind of even down from that level, which is when we do our work, we feel good. When
Yes.
we don't do our work, we don't feel good or we feel bad. And so I make it as simple as that. An example, when you make your bed, you feel good. When you don't make your bed, you feel bad. Or maybe you don't care. But like as far as just cheer on accomplishing something that even is not enjoyable, because so many of my kids will not my I call my clients my kids, but
Exactly.
uh, so many of my teenage clients are just like, well, I hate this class, or it's terrible, or it's boring, or the teacher stinks, and blah blah blah, and it's all the complaining, right? And it's like, but if you do it, you'll feel good, even if you don't like it, right? It's like kind of as simple as that.
I agree 100%. And I remember that conversation, and you're right. Yeah, that's something I've had to learn to tie into my program, is that whole thoughts to feelings to actions to results. And that's something I'm trying to learn for myself and trying to pass it on. Mhm.
Yeah, yeah. And the thing is, at the end of the day, like, there's not one person on this planet who doesn't want to feel good, right? And so it's like if we can kind of emphasize that, and it's like the carrot, it's like, well, there's always the carrot or stick strategy, and some people are truly more motivated by sticks. However, if the carrot is an option, right, we want to go for the carrot. So we want to feel good, we want to get our work done, we want to feel that relief. Like we want to either check it off the list, or I like to tell my clients, like, go jump on the bed, like do anything, anything that's a celebration, because you're getting that physiological response and the dopamine, neurotransmitters like activated. And so it's like, then you tie that behavior to that reward. And so then it's like, you're more likely to repeat that behavior again in the future. So, it's all about that kind of behavioral modification, things like that. But I just like talking about it because so many kids are frustrated, so many moms are frustrated, and they're all kind of like banging their heads against the wall. And it's like, if we can just simplify it, make it easy. And I bet you, well, in fact, let me ask you this: how do you make learning fun?
I mean, it's always kind of hurts a little bit when I have a kid tell me that they don't love to learn, because I'm like, why? Like, it just, it doesn't seem natural to me that you would feel that way, that anyone would feel that way. But yet, once I learn why they feel that way, that it's just that they think they're dumb, they think they can't do something. And so once I can kind of learn that, then the question becomes, yeah, what do they find fun? So I mean, to me, Laura, it's all about their interest. Like we talked about volleyball kid, it's like, okay, what if volleyball was her number one passion? The question would be, how can we tie volleyball into each and every study skill? So that's kind of the short answer, is figuring out a teen's interests and then tying that into everything they need to do, want to do.
Mm-hmm. So I like how your emphasis is really on not the subject, but the study skills within that subject. Is that right?
100%. I do content tutoring, and that's where I was a couple of years ago.
Mhm.
But the more and more students I met with that didn't come to lessons with notes, that didn't know when the next test was, that had no idea what they did with the homework assignment, I'm like, okay, I'm getting them through this one class, but I'm not going to help them forever. So they're going to have the same problem possibly next semester or 3 years from now. I want to give them something they can use for life.
Okay, so I feel like you just answered my question before I asked it, but I was going to say, like, why would someone hire a study skills tutor versus a content tutor? And I think you just answered that question. Do you have anything else to add to that?
I know it's a little harder to understand. I know a lot of parents can understand, okay, my kid's struggling with math, let's get a math tutor. And they don't necessarily understand, well, it's not that the math that's hard, it's the confidence that's hard, or it's my kid never takes notes and then never looks at the notes, So I feel like that's something that I'm passionate about, is that I really like to start with, does your teen actually know how to learn? That's what my webinar is all about. And that's part of the reason, I like to use this number one reason teens don't know how to learn. And that's why they don't love to learn.
Okay. And is there anybody who just naturally gets it and knows how to learn?
I wish. I mean, I would tell you, not only is it a matter of we're missing these skills, then we also get to the point that we stop caring. We stop becoming naturally curious. And, if we don't learn for the sake of learning, we don't necessarily know that we're missing these skills because we didn't care about learning anyway.
Mm-hmm. And so I guess that's why, like, teens, they just stop love learning, because it's like they just hit this brick wall and they're like, well, I don't know how to do this. And so therefore they lose that passion or the love or the motivation, the drive, whatever that kind of positive momentum is. Is that right?
Essentially, yeah, it gets to the point of, do they have a love of learning for the sake of learning, no matter if it's history, math, science, whatever class, or even if it's a chore at home or a hobby. Some kids that care about something, they're going to do whatever it takes to learn that thing so they can make, that goal, that hobby, that grade happen. Other kids, they don't think they're interested in anything or don't know what they're interested in. And so they kind of use it as an excuse to not learn. But I know we're going to talk about mamas in a little bit, but I would tell you that one of the things I want every single parent out there to do is to value education. Because if they value education, then their kids are going to care about learning and care about school way more than they would otherwise.
Mm-hmm. And, I was going to ask you, like, what is the biggest kind of influence on kids? And I would say that would probably be one of them, what you just said. What else influences kids to, love to learn and have that passion versus not?
I think that's a fun question, because I actually just wrapped up a YouTube series yesterday on my channel about inspiring your teens to love learning, because that came up in a consult not too long ago. She used the word inspired. How do I inspire my daughter to want to do her math? Because she loves art, hates math. And so we talked about, okay, what are those connections there? But I would tell you, parents play a big role in not just parents valuing education, but their expectations. Some parents might decide intentionally, and maybe their kids are aware that, my kid's just not good at this class. I never know what to say when parents tell me I don't need my son or my daughter to be a straight A student. I'm like, okay, not expecting the grades, but at the same time, if you're okay with them getting a C on the test versus an A on the test, you still have to have the expectation that they pass, or that they do, know their best. There needs to be some kind of expectation. But I would also tell you, Laura, things like friends. Friends make a huge difference. Like, there's the good kids at school, there's the not so good kids. And so, if a parent wants their son or daughter to be, interested in this college or in this club or getting this certain level of achievement, it comes down to who's in that social circle outside of mom and dad.
Yes. And I see that a lot. And there was a study just put out that said, 99% of what your teenager will absorb is through their social network, as far as any type of behavior. And so that makes total sense. Like if they're hanging out with kids who are motivated and like to study, then they're going to absorb that just kind of by osmosis.
Exactly. 100%. Because one of my students right now, evidently last 2 years, he didn't care about grades, but now he's a junior in high school, has decided, I need this GPA to go to this college. And dad's like, I really don't think he's going to make it, but his son is willing to put in the work. And we talked about it. I was like, who are your friends? Could you study with your friends? Because he's very auditory. And he's like, they wouldn't do that. And so we talked about, well, how can we kind of keep I don't want to say the bro, but, kind of the guy, dude, friend circle without turning it into like Nerdville, if that's not what he is, not what he wants to make them. It's like, you could easily be like playing basketball, just say, hey, what'd you think about the math homework? Or did you guys understand what the science teacher said? I mean, it could be that simple.
Okay. And then here's a big question. What are the 12 essential study skills that you talk about?
Put me on the spot there. So I would tell you, Laura, I always think I'm going to come up with like a fun, like a mnemonic device or a fun, like acronym, but honestly, I haven't come up with something yet. And so though I always like to share them in the order that I teach them. And I teach them in this order for a very particular reason. But I always start with note taking, then we move to annotating, and then we have to figure out how to create those study sessions based on learning style. And then from there, retaining information, and then goal setting, motivation, time management, organization, soft skills, confidence, self-advocacy. And then my newest one is grit and resilience.
Oh, cool. Man, I feel like I want to take your class. I want to know all that. That sounds really cool. And so speaking of, I do have a free gift for the audience. I have a download every week. And so this week, if you go to thepositivelyhealthymom.com/study, I do have a free download on building confidence with studying. So everyone's welcome to grab that.
I'm going to pause my conversation with Jessyka Coulter. If you'd like to hear more, listen to the next episode. Thank you for listening to the Positively Healthy Mom podcast, because there's no manual for the hardest job in the world. Don't forget to subscribe and share with your friends.